Hey everyone, Rob Bonta here. I'm normally talking to you about our public health crisis or our economic crisis created by our public health crisis, but I wanted to talk to you today about what's on all of our minds, in all of our hearts, weighing heavily on all of our shoulders, and that is our ongoing inequality crisis. And wanted to talk to you about the murder of George Floyd and what that meant to so many of us because we're human, because we share the human condition. It was painful for us to see that video. Those of us who watched it, I did, who saw the knee on George Floyd's neck for many minutes, him crying in pain, asking the officers to stop, telling them he couldn't breathe until he couldn't speak anymore, until he was unconscious and he died. And for many of us, that caused and created anger. Many of us, it created pain. And for our Black brothers and sisters, it created a special pain, anger, and frustration because of decades of injustice, lack of change, and not being heard. And there is a rightful rage for the lack of systemic change that has not yet come, and that must. And we are now hearing, not just here in California and around the country, but around the world, a growing chorus of voices, a outcry at full volume that refuses to not be heard. And everyone is listening. We can all hear it. The cries of rage and anger, frustration and pain and anguish, and the call for change. And I wanted to just check in with all of you in this moment. I wanted to be in this moment with you, to feel it and share some of my perspectives and views and feelings in this time, because I know a lot of you are hurting and there's a lot going on in this world, many crises all happening at once. But I want to talk about this one. In particular, I want to talk about my deep belief and support for nonviolent, peaceful protest. I deeply believe in the power of nonviolent, peaceful protest and the undeniable power of the people acting together, side by side, in concert, fighting for what's right. It's not a intellectual belief or an ideological belief. Simply, it's a belief born of experience in my family, my parents working for the United Farm Workers of America, my dad involved in the civil rights movement, my mom in the fight for the restoration of democracy in the Philippines, and seeing that people power up close and personal, that undeniable quest and thirst for change, and the actual realization of that change. That's how change happens. And so in this moment, I know there's a lot of discussion and debate about what's happening with the protests nationwide, and I wanted to share some of my views. Right now, I'm thinking a lot about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his letter from a Birmingham City jail. There's a lot of incredible components to that. It's one of my favorite pieces in terms of being able to go back to it and learn from it and apply it to today. But one part that resonates now is his views on what he called creative tension. Drawing attention, spotlighting, highlighting injustice, making sure that it's focused on and that folks can't turn away. And by drawing attention to it and making people look and not letting them forget about it or move on with their lives, but forcing the issue, pressing the issue. It requires people, again, because they're human and they see the injustice, it's instinctive. They can't turn away from it, that they need to act. and it creates a call to action to change that injustice. And that, to me, is what's happening around this country, around the world, and with the protests here in California, in the East Bay, in the 18th Assembly District. And that is what a vast majority of peaceful, nonviolent protesters are doing. They are sharing their pain, sharing their rage. They're making sure that we see the injustice, and they're not letting us turn away until change happens. And that is exactly how peaceful, nonviolent protest is supposed to work. And certainly, there are also some, a small minority, but some, who are being violent, hurting people, and hurting property. And that is not what we want. That is not what our communities need. We want to be healing, not creating more pain. We want to be uplifting and empowering our communities, not damaging them or destroying them. So peaceful, nonviolent protest is what we want. And that creative tension is what will create the change that we need in this moment. And this is a special moment. I know a lot of us have been in similar moments, but this one feels different to me. And I've talked to a number of folks who've been involved in movements over the years, over the decades, and some of them share that same perspective. This is something that captured the conscience and the imagination, the focus of the world. And it was almost as if the world looked at this incident with a consensus view, a unanimous view, that this was an injustice that cannot be. This is something that should never have happened and cannot happen again. And the environment, in my view, is one that is ripe for what is needed, for what is necessary, for what is required in this moment, and that is change. So I, even in times of sadness and despair, of challenge and adversity, of hurt and harm and anguish, I am often a hopeless optimist in terms of seeing the ability to change and to do better. And so the world is listening, and now the question is, are we going to seize this moment and create the system change that creates more justice that we need in this country? And I think we can. I think we must. And, you know, a lot of people have reached out to me during this time, lots of calls, lots of texts, lots of conversations. And one of the things that has been asked numerous times is what is happening to our country? People have said that out of sadness, out of anger, out of frustration. And I understand all those emotions. I understand all those feelings, because this is not the country we want to be, that we aspire to be, that our founding ideals and principles say we are and should be. But my answer to that question is, what is happening to our country is, this is our country. This is our country right now. And it's a hard truth, but it's a tough and needed look in the mirror. Sobering as it is, painful as it is, we need to look at who we are. And also recognize this, that what we are today is not who we are destined to always be, that we can change, that we live on a continuum of progress, and that you and me are not just bystanders, we're not just observers, we're not just passers-by, we're not just along for the ride. We are agents of change. We are doers, we are shapers of history, we are makers and creators of change in the future that lies ahead of us. So what is now does not have to be. We can change it, we can make it better, and that depends on us and on the actions that we take collectively and individually. And so the question now is not so much are we listening, because we all are, but what are we going to do about it? What actions are we going to take as a society, with our systems, with our change in our institutions, and what are we going to do individually? And so I believe that we can change for the better. I believe we must, and I believe that this moment calls out for change and action to address those systemic injustices that have not yet been addressed, the change that has not yet occurred. And part of it is listening to the voices that we haven't listened to enough, and that is the voices of our Black brothers and sisters. We need to listen to our Black brothers and sisters, see our Black brothers and sisters, and stand with our Black brothers and sisters, because Black lives matter, and we need to do better. We need to look at ourselves. The answers to racism, the solution to racism, the end to racism does not lie with our Black brothers and sisters. It is not their responsibility to fix it, to cure it, to end it, to generate those solutions. That lies with society as a whole, the society that has promoted it, perpetuated it, and allowed for it to happen, and the individuals that make up that society. So we have work to do, and change happens in moments like these, where voices are rising and they're uplifted, and where the volume has turned into a roar that is undeniable, like what is happening right now. So in this moment, I know that we're listening, and I also believe that we have it within ourselves, within our society, to make the change that is necessary to create a fairer, more just system where Black humanity is honored the way it should be, and Black lives and Black bodies are honored and appreciated and recognized and given the dignity and respect that they deserve. I'm going to do a Facebook Live in the next few days to talk more with you, but I wanted to share my thoughts tonight, as I know so many of us are thinking about the same things, and some are angry, worried, concerned, anxious, wondering where we'll go and what will be. I don't know the answer, but I do have hope that we can be better. We must be better, and I believe that we will. So let's all continue to be in this moment together, to continue to feel it and fight for what we know is right, and to end what we know is wrong. Thanks, everybody.